All right, everything should be up and going, I think. How's everybody doing today? Yeah. All right. Okay. I always say here we'll give it a minute or two just to make sure people can come join up and everything else. Um, so sounds good. Good to hear from everybody. This one's not going to be super detailed or anything else, but there's a number of things I need to say in this one, how to fail at off-grid living, because I have seen people that do it for a little while and they fail at it for these reasons. And so it's an important one to do, and then tomorrow yet, and then that will be it. So got a notification from StreamYard that I'm nearing my capacity for the month because of doing so many live streams on the free version of it or whatever. So we'll see. All right, I guess we'll get started here. How to fail at off-grid living. I have a number of points written out here, so we'll go through these. First and foremost, moving north in the fall/winter. Now, this is an old time, very ancient type of a thing, going back probably thousands of years. You don't move north into a cold, frigid environment in the fall or winter if you're not moving to some place that's on grid. Obviously, ancient people, there was no grid to move to, so you go and you move to an area in the spring so that you can get a good head start at getting food saved up and whatever else for the winter. Firewood, of course, is a very important thing to have a good source of dry firewood. You can burn dead standing timber. We have done that, but it just doesn't give you the heat and whatever else, that well. Dead standing timber is good. If it's a softwood, it's good for cooking a nice short hot fire. You don't need a whole lot of heat from it in terms of to heat your home or something. If you're just cooking with it, dead standing timber is fine to use. We have a lot of that on our property and everything here and there. I mean, it's not like our trees are all dead or anything, but you can find it. And for quite some time, that's all we used for cooking off-grid in our wood cook stove during the summer months is what we did. Because the softwood burns up so quickly, it doesn't produce a lot of long-lasting heat. So it gives you enough heat to cook your food, and then it goes out, and that's it, and it's done. But people that move to the north in the fall/winter, it rarely ever ends well. I don't care how much money you have and whatever else. You move to a cold northern area, and in the fall and winter, it's just going to be miserable. Unless you're moving to a cabin that is completely furnished and has everything and wood split and everything else. Again, unless you're really prepared for it. But if you're just freshly moving to some place and you want to, build from the ground up, from scratch, do not move in the fall and winter. Okay, that's point number one in terms of how to fail at off-grid living. Point number two, failure to do research about where you want to move. All right, again, a lot of people will see cheap land like up here in northern Maine, or you get some other areas and things, upper peninsula of Michigan, or maybe some places in Montana. You can get some pretty cheap land out there. Idaho, probably a little bit, but there's been a lot of people moving to Idaho. Looking and, oh man, it's so cheap there and everything else. Well, there's a reason it's cheap. Okay. Up here, I can speak from experience. Northern Maine, there's not a whole lot of things available at stores and in the area. You don't have a huge amount of um, big, shopping malls or whatever else. Some people, really feel a need for that stuff. I personally am glad that we don't really have any big shopping malls. There's only one that I'm aware of in northern Maine, and that is the I think Aroostook Center Mall or something. I think it's called in Presque Isle, and that thing there is pretty much dead. It had a Kmart when we first moved, and that's gone now. I think all the Kmarts in northern Maine are gone. All the Burger Kings are gone, which not really a big loss there, but um, yeah, it's a very economically repressed area. There's not a whole lot of money up here in terms of a lot of big business and a lot of development and things. It's actually going the opposite direction. When northern Maine lost out on making a lot of potatoes, and they started to mechanize the potato thing, a lot of people lost their jobs as a result of that. Um, as logging became more mechanized, people lost their jobs because of that. Now you don't need a lot of men out there in the woods with chainsaws. You have these big machines that just go out, grab the trees, just cut them off, put them down, run them through the wheels and things, and cut them, buck them to length, and limbing and bucking, and just it's done like that. I mean, these guys up here with the high yield logging, Irving being the biggest one, they can just take a forest down in a matter of days, for a fairly decent sized property. I've seen that thing, and smaller. I'm talking if you get into hundreds of acres, yeah, it's going to take them a little bit longer, but the work's just not there. And then the other big thing, you had potatoes, logging, and then the other big one here in northern Maine and back in the 1990s, early 1990s, was Loring Air Force Base, um, and up in Limestone, Maine, which is northeast of us, where we're at here. And that was a lot of people. When they closed that Air Force Base, that whole area just died. And some of the people from the base stayed, and some of the retired guys, I should say, I think they retired to the area here and whatever, that used to be active there on the base. And they still use the base. The Department of Defense still uses some things up there, but for the most part, it's been decommissioned as a military base. So those three big things hit northern Maine, and the economy went down. And so people, they might look and say, oh, wow, land's so cheap up there. But there's a reason it's that cheap. Okay. And like I said, it's not an easy place to live up here with the very harsh winters and then a lot of bugs in the summertime and, very short growing season and whatever else. Alaska, I've been to Alaska. I have family actually living in Alaska right now. My mother actually went and she's living with them. After my dad passed away here in December, this previous December, um, they're putting the house up for sale that they had, and then she went and she's living with my brother in Alaska right now. So I have family there. I visited them there years ago, and some decent properties in Alaska that are cheaper. But why are they cheaper? Depending on where you go, there's some that are decent priced, but then there's some that are decent. I should say a little bit more expensive, but then there's some that are really cheap. But you have to ask the question, why are they really cheap? So do your research before you move. Do not move to an area without going there as on a sort of a vacation type of a thing. Take your time before you buy a property. Walk the property, walk around and look at it and things. Again, if you're moving to the north and you're trying to look at property in the north, you're not even going to see it. I mean, we don't see the dirt here again with most winters until May usually. So you go and you buy some property sight unseen in the winter time, well, you might be kind of shocked when the snow melts. So it's something that you need to really consider. A lot of people just go and they buy land. Again, we've seen that here. You'll see somebody buy some land and they'll do a little bit of work on it, and then it's just that's it, and they don't build anything else, and it's done, and then it goes up for sale a little bit after that. There's been a lot of people that move here, even on grid, and they quit. So point number 3, how to fail at off-grid living. Propane, kerosene, and generator dependency. people have the idea that you have all these electrical appliances and everything else that you can't live without, and then they go and they, have to have everything there, just the conveniences of home or conveniences of an on-grid house, we'll say, and they get very dependent upon all the different types of fuels out there that run those things, and it becomes very expensive. It can be very frustrating if a generator dies. I went through that. I've told this story before, but my brother, the same one that's in Alaska, he had a cabin in Yak, Montana, the northwest corner of Montana, almost at the Idaho-Canada border. I mean, it's way up there in the northwest. And I was taking a shower after helping him out with firewood all day, and I was in there, and he had basically, I think the way that the system worked, he would run his generator, which would, basically pump the water up out of, which ran the pump, I guess I should say, up out of his well into the house, and then you can, have a shower or whatever else. So I was in the shower, and his generator, it was just a cheap one, and it died about halfway through the shower. So I'm there, and I have, shampoo on my hair and soap on me and everything, and oh, the water went out. Oh man. And so he's out there trying to pull start the thing, and he's trying to get the thing going, and it just would not start. So he finally had to get down to the neighbor and get some 1-gallon jugs, like old milk jugs of water, and brought it up so I could finish my shower. But then they went and bought a Honda generator after that, which worked a lot better. But the whole point is they can break down at any time, the generator thing. And if you're depending on that, that's a bad idea, very bad idea. And right now, the price of fuel and the availability of fuel is not real great. So kerosene and propane, that's kind of not so much kerosene, but propane is a big thing for a lot of off-grid homesteads. There's a really nice lodge actually for sale up here, and not too far from us, a little bit to the northwest, heading into the Allagash Wilderness area. It's not in that, but it's, if you look it up, I'm saying, if you're interested, if you're curious about what I'm talking about, and really neat lodge, but everything's propane. And I mean, it's back in the middle of nowhere. It's way back in. There's no way you're getting electricity ever to that thing. And so, I'm thinking, okay, it's really neat, but man, the propane thing, you'd be going through so much propane with all the different lodge buildings. They all have propane lights, different types of propane water heat systems and whatever for the um, the showers that are there. It actually, the water system there at that place, I was reading about it, and it actually has a spring up on a hill, and it gravity feeds down to all the different cabins, which is really neat. That's a really great system to have. But if you get dependent on that stuff and the price starts to go up, you might not be able to afford it. And then what do you do? Um, I mean, if you have the brains, you can of course go and you can. There's different alternatives to propane and kerosene and natural gas and whatever else. You can do that as well. I realize that, but we don't all have those skills. Uh, the fourth way to fail at off-grid living, another one that I really have to strongly warn about. If you're going off-grid, okay, don't get into debt to do it. If you're going to a bank and trying to get money, borrow money to go off-grid, that can be kind of dangerous, because off-grid living it's not easy, and a lot of times you'll be shocked at some of the expenses that might come up, and you build something and you think, okay, that's done, and all of a sudden a storm comes through and it damages it or whatever else, and now I have this expense and I wasn't planning on that, and this thing here, I didn't know about that, and if you have a debt hanging over your head with all of that, it can make it very, very tough. So the whole purpose of off-grid living is to be small, sustainable, and affordable, to live as cheaply as you can. The Bible talks about a man making himself poor that he might be rich. You live like you're poor, live way below your means, and keep that money there to build with, or to buy livestock, or to put in a garden, or to buy a tractor if you want to, or whatever else. Or, oh, this wear and tear on my vehicle is pretty bad, because especially if you live up north like I do here, you're looking at 6 months of salt on the roads. That does a number of vehicles. We have 2 vehicles right now that are not inspectable anymore because of the rust. They both run, but I can't inspect them and have them on the road anymore because of how bad they rust up here from all the salt that they're exposed to. Not only that, but you also have wear and tear on them from going back stone roads and, off-roading, essentially, if you're trying to get back into some areas to do foraging or hunting or fishing, which we do. And that's why we have a Jeep Cherokee, an older one. We go back into some pretty, wild places. And again, it's paid for. We save up our money and save up and save up. We sell things. I'll fix vehicles and sometimes and sell them and whatever else. Whatever I have to do to stay out of debt. That's very important when you go in, when you're off grid, because you're trying to live cheap. That's the whole purpose of it. If you're going to go into debt and whatever else, well, maybe get an on-grid place or something like that, and a mortgage for that. I understand. I mean, ultimately the perfect thing, would be no mortgage and live debt-free as a Christian, but I understand how corrupt the system is right now and how expensive it is to have a place. So I'm not about to judge anybody that has a mortgage. I get it. But I'm just saying, if you're going to try to live that sustainable, low-key, tiny house, off-grid, whatever kind of life, you should really try to do it without going into debt. And quite frankly, if you go to the bank, they're probably going to give you a really hard time about buying something like that and living that way. They might not even get a mortgage for something like that. Number 5, how to fail at off-grid living. Acting like you are better than the local people. Don't do that. Okay, you move to an area, get to be very humble around the people that you move into that area. They're looking at you, especially a very remote area. They're going to look at you as a threat, because a lot of people in a remote area, country areas, they don't really like change. I'm one of them. I don't really like people coming and trying to change things and mess with this and that and whatever else. Come in very gently, very softly, be humble, talk to local people, get to know local people, but don't be pushy, don't be real loud or anything else. Just kind of come in, and if you disagree with them, that's fine, but just keep it to yourself, pretty much. That's an important thing. I mean, you can learn a lot from local people, and like I said in other videos in this seminar, I have learned quite a bit from people in this area here, especially older people. I love to talk to them, and I love to ask them a lot of questions, and they'll be very open about that. And you say, I'm not from here, and I'm just really trying to learn about the local customs, local ways that people did things, and how did people do this in the past? I mean, before the snowplows came in I think it was the 1960s or something, here in northern Maine, they really didn't plow a lot of the areas up here. So people lived here, some of the areas up here, they were living here 100 years before they ever plowed, the roads. And I mean, that's pretty amazing to think about. You're getting a lot of snow up here and the roads aren't plowed. How did they get around? A lot of horse-drawn, sleighs and people skiing and all kinds of things like that is an amazing thing. Learn from local people. Don't act like you're better than they are. That's an important one. Another one that kind of ties into that is the thing of moving city conveniences to an off-grid property. Okay. And there's an attitude between country people and city people for a reason. A lot of people come and they have a lot of things that are supposedly making your life more convenient, but they're actually, in my opinion, making it more difficult. And you try to move that to an off-grid property. Like I've said, I've seen off-grid channels on YouTube, and they talk about running dishwashers off of solar power. Well, that's stupid, in my opinion. That's a very stupid thing to do. That's a great waste of water and a great waste of power when you could just be doing it by hand. People that do that are missing the point of what it means to go off grid. They want to move to the area and buy an on-grid place and have all that stuff there. Okay, but the more mechanical little gadgets and gizmos that you have on your off-grid property, the more you're going to go crazy trying to take care of it all. Trust me on that one. I have experience in that. I don't have a dishwasher or anything, but I'm just saying with vehicles and machines and whatever else around that I'm constantly having to fix and take care of, it's a lot better to go more simple. Number 7, another way to fail at off-grid living: introducing foreign animals and plants to an area where they don't belong. All right. There are certain plants that should not be grown in certain environments. It's a foreign kind of, it can become an invasive thing. I don't know how many invasive plants and whatever up here that were introduced, and now they just took over and they're going and they're spreading all over the place, and it makes a problem. It chokes out the local native plants, and a lot of times the animals go away with the plants. Plants die out, the animals die out. And they say, well, animals can adapt. Well, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And that makes a big problem. And I don't really want people moving to a natural area and bringing a bunch of foreign introduced things into there and planting them. And, oh, I didn't realize that would kill the special bees that pollinate this flower over here or whatever. Just think, bad situation. There's a lot of that. And of course, you bring in livestock or whatever else that comes into the area and they can't handle the climate. You're just going to drive yourself crazy with that. It's not a good thing to do. They're not going to be very well. They're going to be getting sick. Again, do your homework. Do your research. Number 8, how to fail at off-grid living: not dressing for the new climate. Now that, of course, means mostly the thing of you move north and you don't have warm enough clothing. All right. Usually you can figure out if you move down south, it's really hot down there and whatever else. Well, wear the right kind of clothes down there. Obviously, I wouldn't dress like this or put this, lamb skin or whatever around my shoulders and things to stay warm if I moved to Florida or whatever. Wouldn't need it. Dress for the new climate. Learn what things work. I'm a big fan of natural fibers for a northern environment. Wool, linen, some types of cotton flannel are very good. Synthetic stuff, I just don't care for the synthetics. I've tried it and I end up either being too hot or too cold, sweating, and it doesn't properly get rid of the sweat, and it's terrible. I've done firewood with synthetic clothing on and things, and I just get hot and sweaty and my shirt gets all wet and everything in the wintertime. Then you get cold when you stop and you have to walk back to the cabin or whatever. Wool, you can work outside and you get hot, but the sweat it breathes. It's a natural fiber. It breathes, so it gets rid of the sweat. And it also, this might sound odd, but wool is very, I don't remember if you call it antibacterial or antihistomatic, or not histomatic. What's the antihistamine type of thing? But I can't think of the terminology. But wool is, it actually will get rid of smell. So if you are really sweaty and whatever else, it's not going to stink really bad. And you can go a long time without washing wool sweaters or wool clothing. And as far as, well, it's really itchy or whatever else. Well, if you get a finer micron level of the fabric, it's really not that bad. So just something to think about. And this wool sweater that I have here, which I said this in another live stream, I'll just repeat it again. But this thing was $5 at a Goodwill store. Went in and saw it. I got one of these, this gray one, and I have a black one just like it. They're both $5. Pure wool. And I wear cotton underneath. Wear like cotton clothes underneath it like that. So there's different types of wool and everything else. So it's a great thing to have the right kind of clothing. You don't get cold. You layer your clothing, and it's in the 50s right now in this room here, and I'm fine. I'm not freezing or anything else. I'm fine. And we go out and we go snowshoeing a lot in the winter or the dead of winter. It's sub-zero temperatures out. I've preached sermons. They're on my YouTube channel here. Preach sermons when it's 20 below zero. Yeah, it works if you have the right clothing. You know how to dress for it. Have the right kind of boots, the right kind of gloves, the right kind of hat. I'm a big fan of shearling type of stuff. Shearling is just what I have here behind me. This is a sheep skin, and it's leather on the inside like that. You can see the leather on the inside, and then the wool on the outside. And I didn't even know what shearling was when we first moved to Maine, and I was reading up some articles and things on it, and they were saying that shearling is the top tier of warm clothing. If you look into the Eskimos and things, the people were really in the far northern environments, and the native peoples of like the eastern Siberian area, the Yakutsk people, I think they're called, and a lot of those people, they'll wear multiple layers of animal skins. And I think how they do it is they have the leather. They'll have the leather on the inside and the fur pointing out, and then they have another layer of fur pointing in with the leather out. Or maybe I have that backwards. It might be that the fur in, leather out, or something like that. But they have two layers of it. And I read an article. A guy had this polar fleece on and all the North Face, really ultra Arctic stuff on and things, like they would wear if they're climbing Mount Everest or something. And synthetic nylon outer shell, and polyester fleece on the inside for insulation. And he said he was just freezing. And one of the native people said, "Here, put this suit on. It's made out of animal hides." And he kind of, can't be that good. He put it on. And he said, "Wow," it just blew his mind how warm he was. And I started to experiment with it, and it's absolutely true. The warmth it just feels like a warm, like there's heat on or something. I mean, it's not the best for working in, I will say that. This type of a thing, it doesn't really let moisture out because of the leather barrier. A knit wool thing like this, there's enough holes and things in it that it will let the sweat out and the moisture from your sweat out and whatever, but it keeps the heat in. And the other neat thing about this is that these can get wet, and they still, like if you're outside and it rains or you get a lot of snow on you and the snow's melting, it doesn't lose its insulation abilities. So again, if you head north, and we knew people that came here and from down south, and they were going to make it. They came in the fall, right before winter. Bad idea, mistake number one. They came and they had little thin coats on and all this other stuff. They were just freezing. And it's, just, you're doing it wrong. You shouldn't be doing it this way. And they learned the hard way. Another thing that I have to advise against is, again, depending on where you go, this can vary one way or the other. But another way to fail at off-grid living is to go to the government to get permission for everything that you want to do. All right. Most places that are remote like this, they don't really care. But if you're going in and just talking too much and whatever, which is actually the next point, talking too much to the wrong people, that can be a bad thing as well. Famous YouTuber, I'll get back to the government thing here in a minute, but the famous YouTuber Sean James, the My Self-Reliance channel, basically had to leave his first homestead because he was making all these videos and whatever else, and he ticked off some of the neighbors up there, and they were harassing the guy and whatever, just making his life miserable. And he finally left. Finally just said, "Okay, I need to leave. I have to get out of here." Be sensitive to the needs of the people in your area, especially those that have been there all their lives or whatever else. Don't come in there and, I don't know what all happened with his situation, but it's just one of those things that you just be careful who you talk to. Be respectful when you move to an area, but as far as going to the government for all kinds of stuff like that, just be careful with that. I mean, certainly try to be law abiding and the whole deal, but there are some things that You know, especially if you're saved, if the Lord shows you something and says, okay, this is what you should do, then go do it. Um, right now, we are heading into the biblical, you know, we are in the end times. We're not heading into it. We are in the end times. Um, we're seeing a lot of really crazy stuff around the world. And you just have to get to a point where you say, you know, if this is what the Lord wants me to do, then I'm going to do this. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not trying to grow illegal things or whatever else. But the governments of this world are getting extremely corrupt because the people are very corrupt. And you just simply say, you know, like I said in another live stream, it's easier to ask forgiveness than it is to ask permission. Learned that from a guy I used to be in ministry with. He was a Marine in the Marine Corps. He was a sergeant. Um, got out of the Marines, but he was a sergeant when he was in. So you just do it, plain and simple, and let the Lord protect you. Um, again, you know, I'm studying this whole thing of what's going on with the banking system right now, and it's just insane. I actually heard an economist today, and he said that the bank accounts have been weaponized. And I thought, well, that's a profound statement right there. Oh, hey, you were giving money to these people we don't like here. We consider them to be a terrorist organization, the trucker convoy thing. Oh, sorry, we're locking your account down. Oh, you're attacking this. Oh, we're just going to do a run on, you know, just going to shut your banking down and whatever else, and cause a run on the banks, which will destroy your economy. And the bankers and banking system is so incredibly corrupt, and we are so dependent on it, and that's really a bad thing. And so the whole reason I advocate for off-grid living, or if you're on grid, at least having some off-grid skills, is because they're going to use this stuff, you know, as time goes by. They already have used it, but they're going to make it worse, where they can simply say, okay, we're going to shut off your electricity, we're going to lock down your bank account, we're going to do whatever. That's the future. Um, and I feel that, and I know some people are saying, well, I'm not anywhere even close to being prepared for this thing. I'm sorry about that. You're just going to, you know, rely on your prayers to the Lord. Make sure you clean your life up and say, okay, Lord, if there's any sin that's displeasing in thy sight, please help me to get it out of my life. I want to have power as a Christian. I want, you know, I don't want anything between me and you. I don't want anything to disrupt our fellowship, Lord. Please help me to have power against this evil system that's coming in. Um, so that's what I have for my list here. And we can go to questions and answers here. But I really feel a burden that I'm seeing this thing, especially like I said with the banking. It is getting nuts. I mean, there are stories of people just having their bank account just disappear. I know one of the economists I watch had three. He has multiple accounts in different banks. He had three of his accounts closed down, and he's going into the bank and he's saying, you know, and he did a recording of this, and he said, yeah, he goes in and he said, where's my money? And they said, well, you have to show us proof that, you know, that you had this account, whatever. And he said, well, I have showed you proof. Yes, but we need to see more proof, like PayPal did with me a while back. And these people, they're getting an attitude towards certain people that don't go along with the agendas. And then they say, hey, guess what? We're just going to come and shut you down. And of course, what's it leading to? We know what it leads to as Christians. It leads to the mark of the beast ultimately. But they have to destroy cash. They have to destroy any kind of physical wealth or whatever else and make the people completely dependent. We still have cash. We still have other forms of wealth. And we're not completely dependent on the government at this point in time, or at least I hope you're not completely dependent on the government. But it's not heading in a good direction. We have to be here. He who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. That is our job. We're supposed to hinder the system of Antichrist. The Holy Spirit is within us, and we can go and fight against this stuff. But we can't fight if we're dependent on the system. You know, I'm going to protest against this evil stuff and everything else. And as long as you keep, you know, my lights on and my food in the grocery store, my bank, my money in the bank, not a very strong position. So, okay. Answer some questions here. Question off topic. My cousin had a dream where they were checking people's hands palms for what looks like a pointed star. I check and it links to Islam and Chinese. Not sure about Judaism. That's interesting. Which economist do you listen to when you do? Oh, hit the wrong one there. I listen to a number of them, and I'm not saying I agree with everything that all these guys say, but Jeremiah Babe, Economic Ninja, Neil McCoy Ward, trying to think of who else. Mark Moss, he's another one I listen to sometimes. The Stansbury Research thing, she has different guests on, different guys and whatever else that'll come on there and say some things. So that's kind of a variety type of thing. She has she'll have a lot of the world leading experts on with the economy, and they'll say different things and whatever else. Some of these bigger guys and whatnot. I've listened to some of Robert Kiyosaki's stuff, but I don't really agree with him on the whole making wealth through debt thing. And I don't know, I have some issues with him. I don't agree with him totally, but guys like Gerald Celente and Gregory Mannarino, I don't really like the profanity and things. Those guys just can't control their mouth, so I don't really recommend either of them. It's just vexing to listen to them. So they know a lot of things, but I don't really mess with them that much. Question: are you going to be making more videos exposing the Roman Catholic Church? Yes, I am. I have some big stuff planned on that. I might actually be writing a book on that. There's a bunch of stuff I'm going to be coming out with on the Roman Catholic Church from their sources. I have a lot of Catholic sources here, and some pretty hardcore stuff coming up. So yeah, I felt really compelled to do this thing, the notes that I wrote a year or so ago, and I just really kind of thought to myself, I need to get something done on this off-grid thing that, to show people, I have done a lot of research into it. I know what I'm talking about. And okay. Do you have any experience with back boilers connected to wood stoves, radiators, pros, cons? No, I don't. I do not have anything experience with that. My ultimate way of thinking is to go as simple as possible. So you get into any kind of tubes and things and whatever, and thermal siphoning, and even some of what stuff you're talking about, you're introducing more difficulty into a system that can be very simple. I try to go with a lot more of the really ancient, primitive type of way. I shouldn't say primitive, but the ancient ways of doing things is what interests me. Do you think that America in particular will go full on communist or alt-right fascist? Communist first and then fascist, if I can say it that way. Not trying to be political or anything here, but that's what I see happening. Do you think it would be easier for someone to move from cold areas to hot ones than the reverse, easier to adapt? Posted image of what my cousin earlier in the chat. I don't know. It depends, I think, on your ancestral makeup and whatever else. I'm Northern European in my ancestry, so for me, I've never liked the heat. It doesn't matter, even now, if it gets up to 90 degrees, I feel like I'm dying. I mean, it's bad. I really don't sleep good above about 70, 75 degrees. I like it to be a lot colder. So me adapting to the south, to a hot tropical climate, not happening. I just can't see that ever happening. Question: if we have a burden to get out from where we live but don't have the resources, how or where do we start? You can start camping. That's a very cheap thing to do. Just start to again, one of the things that I've been preaching the whole way through this off-grid seminar is off-grid living is 90% here, 10% here. All right, and to explain that one more time, if you are saying, hey, I enjoy this off-grid living, I enjoy the thing of being self-sufficient and whatever else, then you aren't going to mind cleaning out sawdust toilet buckets or skinning a squirrel and pulling the guts out and there's blood all over your hands or whatever. It's an adventure. It's fun. It's like you move off grid, it's like a permanent camping trip, it's exciting. But if you're out there and you're going, oh, I got my hands dirty and oh, I broke this or that or whatever, you're not going to make it. So you can have all the money in the world, you can be big and strong, but if you don't have the right mindset for it, you won't make it. So it's develop the mindset first is what you need to do. And then you start to get into the thing of, like I said, go camping, go out to a park, go start to learn skills, study like crazy. It takes a lot of study to go off grid. Okay, where am I at here? Do you think our government is capable of nuking us? They can easily blame it on Russia, just like COVID came from China, supposedly. Yeah, yeah. I don't doubt that for 1 second. There's theories out there about that nuclear weapons. There are no aerial nuclear weapons. It's all just ground-based type of stuff. And I've never looked into it. I haven't researched it. I'm ignorant on it, but it's an interesting thing. And if that's true, and some of our cities here in America or ones up in Canada or whatever else, if they get taken out by nuclear weapons and there's no such thing as an aerial nuclear weapon, then that would prove that it was premeditated and pre-planned, like the explosives that were set in the towers, on 9/11. No question about that. I mean, there's building number 7 came down, controlled demolition, and no airplane hit it. And it wasn't because, material was hitting it from above or something because of the north and south tower, falling down or whatever. So could they nuke our own cities and things? Yeah. Okay. Trying to catch up here. I'm a little bit behind in my comments. Are you familiar with gray water systems that conserve water? You mean in terms of, they can recycle it and whatever else and things. Well, we kind of do something like that. We have our sink water that goes out into like a little area where different plants grow and they grow really well. We don't use any kind of like real strong antibacterial dish soap or anything. We just use really natural things, so it doesn't kill plants. It actually helps them to grow. But there are systems where you can refilter water and whatever else. Again, we've never really looked into that. I'm ignorant on that issue. What do you think one should do if they live off grid but has neighbors that play loud worldly music? Well, I can tell you what we did. Our property that we have, probably about a mile and a half away, is a pub and bar, and they had this rock concert the one night, and we could hear it a mile and a half away. It was loud, and so after that, we went and we put little gospel coins, threw them at the place, around, going into the door and wherever else and things. We gospel coined it and just started praying and saying, Lord, please rebuke them. And the place went up for sale a couple days later and sold. And since then there's been no other rock concerts. So will you be making a book on church buildings? Probably eventually I will. That's a good question. I've thought about it, but there's a couple that would come before that. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet on that whole thing, but I feel vexed for being dependent on the system. I feel terrible that I'm not a survival expert as a 34-year-old man. I'm going to start by getting camping supplies and honing my skills and research. Absolutely. And please don't feel like, oh, I'm just no good or whatever. I didn't even get started till I was in my, late 30s and things. So we've had so much of our skills as people taken from us because of being raised in this system where we're just dependent on all of our conveniences. You have to get back to the way we once were, which will be covered tomorrow. We're going to be talking about some ideas how to start going off grid. Actually, it's going to be the future of what I would call old paths living and how to start going off grid instantly. I'm going to be covering both those topics tomorrow as our final part of this seminar. Question: Israeli News Live talked about Nuki, New York to justify war with Russia, false flag, the Jews moved out of New York. I don't know. War with Russia would not go very well for America. Question: Why are church buildings bad if it's just a gathering like we are supposed to do as Christians? War, I'm still thinking of war. Well, church buildings have plenty of war in those places. I mean, fights, splits, church splits over the carpet collar of the pastor doing this or that, or the wrong people sang in the choir and whatever else. The biggest problem with church buildings, okay, I've preached on this whole thing for years. If people meet in a building and it's a church that has a steeple on the top and whatever else and things, that seems like an innocent thing, but it goes along with a whole lot of other stuff. There's no scripture for it. That's the biggest one. Number two, where did it come from? It came from Catholicism. Nobody has ever been able to debunk that. There are no Christian church buildings from the first century. None. Right? It came from paganism. The very architecture itself is, phallic steeple and the Greek Parthenon and the whole deal. Well, we don't have those on our church building, but you're still associating a building with the church and not the people with the church. And they all say, oh, no, we understand. No, they don't. No, they don't. And you get people, you get the double life with church buildings. What I do when I'm in church and what I do when I'm outside of church. I go off on that in a very big way. It's fine to meet together and to fellowship and everything else. Not a problem. Okay, I'm getting down here. Have you seen the channel Sounds Like Rain and Tiny Notes from Home? Yeah, I have. There's some weird, there's a lot of weird offshoots of the Amish system, and they're not Amish. I understand that, but you get into the head covering thing, you get into some of the weird Hebrew names replacing the English names and the words, and there's some weird stuff about them. I've looked into them. They're into the thing of following Jesus, and that's a real dangerous movement. It might sound good on the surface, but it's not. It really is not. We're supposed to be in the Pauline epistles primarily for our doctrine. You start to do the follow Jesus thing, and they start to try to bring in the kingdom and try to live by the rules of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5 through chapter 7. They try to bring that in and all this pacifistic, non-resistance and everything. It's not where we're at right now dispensationally. So it's bringing in the kingdom without the king, without the Lord Jesus Christ, and that's very deadly, very dangerous. I would warn very highly against that channel. I'm over 55 years old, and I cut my own trees down, split and stack. I have a large garden, and I preserve what I grow. I also have chickens for protein. Lesson: go and do, get up and get to work. Amen. Amen. Thank you for your comment. Exactly. Okay. I'm not there yet. I'm 46, but so I'm not too far behind you. But there's times that you have some aches and pains and whatever else, but the best way to get through that is to work hard. And I feel more alive now than I did when I was in my 20s. So don't be afraid of the hard work that comes from living off grid. Do you believe in strict Orthodox Christian Jews like in the first century are saved, or do they need to follow the new covenant from God to be saved? Well, the new covenant has not come in yet. There's a difference between new covenant and New Testament. I did a whole sermon on that. The new covenant comes in later. The New Testament is right now. And any Jew out there needs to be saved just like any Gentile needs to be saved by putting their faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, his death, burial, and resurrection. Without that, they can't be saved. Um, um, Question: do you think that Israel could annex Gaza and the West Bank, and that the UN could use that as an excuse to expel the Jews from all nations, thus causing them to return to their homeland? Um, it could be, definitely could be. Um, I'm also a lady and work harder than a man. Yeah, there's a lot of women out there that are off grid and they're very strong, very tough, and it feels good. You get a load of firewood done and whatever else. You look at it, it's great. You get you do your work around the homestead and whatever else. It's a wonderful feeling of accomplishment. I mean, anybody out there that's not into the off-grid thing or whatever, I highly recommend you get at least somewhat more self-sufficient. Try to do some more things and whatever else, and don't think to yourself, well, I'm just too old and frail and weak and whatever. You'd be surprised. I'm almost 67, and after this seminar today, I'm going to go cut some logs. Well, amen, brother. That's great. So what's the new covenant? The difference between the New Testament and the New Covenant is the Testament is about Jesus Christ dying on the cross. The covenant is the Abrahamic covenant, and the Lord, when he brings in a new covenant there, it's kind of, he's dealing with the nation of Israel. It's different than the New Testament. Romans chapter 11 talks about it. For this is my covenant with them when I shall take away their sins, as a people. So I did a whole study on it. This is about the off-grid thing here. People are asking questions. What does this verse mean? I'm not getting into that stuff right now. I'm trying to focus on off-grid. So I've done a lot of studies on that stuff already. And if I'm doing a Bible type of study in the future with, Bible questions, well, then I'm more in that mode of thinking. In your experience, does homeschooling work with off-grid living for younger children? Absolutely. We've been homeschooling my son. There's no time off for my son. There's no, we get the summer months off now or something. It's homeschooling all the time. He has year-round schooling. We teach him things. We take him to museums, and at any time throughout the year. He's helped build cabins. He's helped to, pick berries, cut firewood, fix ATVs, fix vehicles. He just learns all the time, learning to read, learning to write, learning, math and everything else. I mean, he was a little tiny boy, and I'd be up on a ladder and say, okay, I need 3 of those screws over there. And he'd go to that thing and he'd count out 1, 2, 3. And he'd say, he'd look up and say, is that right? And I'd say, yes, son. And he'd take them and he'd hand them to me, So yeah, there's no time off for homeschooling children when you're off grid. And it's a great way for them to learn. Exercise keeps lean muscle, which makes you live longer and healthier, and the work also helps you regulate sleep better, etc. Lots of benefits to an active lifestyle. Yeah, amen. Anyone who has children, please homeschool. Please homeschool them. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very important thing. What are some dangers of the woods we need to be careful for? Bears, etc. Thoughts? Well, depending on where you go, if you're down south, I wouldn't really even worry about bears down south, in the sort of like Appalachian Mountains. My thing would be more about snakes, poisonous snakes. Um, Black bears, my encounters with them over the years, um, usually they will go the other way when they see you. Usually they will not charge you or whatever else. If you're there and they have some young ones nearby, they might charge you, but for the most part, they're not going to mess with you. Um, the moose that we have up here can get huge, and I've run into so many of them now out in the woods and whatever else. They really aren't a problem. Um, I was in Alaska and I heard stories of moose attacking people up there and whatever. And I don't know if they're more aggressive or if people are more aggressive up there, but usually if you leave them alone or make noise or whatever else, or get a tree in between you and them, you're not in any danger at all. You know, most animals in North America are not going to be super dangerous unless you hit areas where there's grizzly bears. Yeah, then you have a problem. You definitely need to be armed then. Um, Grizzly bears can get quite psychotic. But like I said, I'd be more worried about poisonous snakes than I would be bears or whatever else. We're in a good spot here. We don't really have problems with wild animals or anything. Although you can get neighbors' dogs and whatever else can be a problem if they get out and they're nasty. Um, when will you set up a forum where brothers and sisters can share information about relocating on the event of war? Just wondering. Probably never going to happen online. There's a lot of problems with doing that type of thing online. Um, Question: if one wants to camp, can she have own garden? Is it possible? Um, I would say no on that one, because trying to get your own garden. I mean, if you have a spot where you can camp, yes, you could have a garden there, probably. But I think it'd be a lot better idea to learn to forage at that point for wild edibles. They're a lot healthier, and they grow everywhere. You don't have to have some little thing where you're out there weeding the garden or whatever else. Um, Again, understand that nature is a permaculture. It is not or polyculture, I guess I should say. It's not a monoculture. Um, there are certain plants that grow really well around other plants. So you might find blueberries in underneath fir trees and right beside some other plants and herbs and whatever else. And you wouldn't even think about growing it that way in a garden. But out in nature, they grow really well together. And so learning to get some good books on wild edibles and things, and you would be amazed. I mean, you can spend a lot of time on that, going out and finding wild edibles, and like I said, health benefits are off the charts with that stuff. So if you're going out camping, go camp in areas where you can go out and do some foraging and find the wild edibles, and be great. What is the largest size animal you have hunted? Um, I've gone deer hunting, never got one in my entire life. So I just, had a bunch of bad experiences with it growing up, sitting there hunting, and Amishmen walking up to me when I was in Pennsylvania. They'd walk up, "Are you seeing anything?" You know, so I just, whatever. I got shot at a couple times, deer hunting in Pennsylvania. There's too many people down there hunting out in the woods, and I go up hunting in deer season, and guys are drinking the night before they go out hunting, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's real good. And then you get, like I said, they shoot at you, and bullets going over my head, and so I just kind of gave up on deer season down there, and just never really got much into it. I got more into fishing after that, which I was quite a fanatic for trout fishing, and still am. But small game is usually what I go for. But definitely not opposed to going after bigger game. Um, any update on the trespassers that were going on your land a little while back? Yeah, they've tried to hit again. Plow truck. I don't know if I made a mention of this, but my plow truck got hit. I bolted a whole bunch of stuff around the catalytic converter to make it really difficult, and they try to get through it when we're not there. Um, So that's a continuing prayer request to that those guys would get caught, or that they would leave the area, or whatever else. It's really irritating. We'll get them eventually, but I don't want to have to deal with that and whatever else. But it's irritating. People can't respect private property. It makes me mad. Do you think it would be safer to be in the forest or the desert when living off-grid? I'm more used to the forest. I've never lived in a desert area, so I don't really know. Good question. I have to respond to this one. I don't mean to sound crazy, but do you think there's any validity to the stories of Sasquatch? They're supposed to be in the woods, so hey, just curious. There was this meme thing put out a few years back where they were showing this, one of the pictures of Sasquatch where he's running and he's kind of looking back, and big hairy guy or whatever else, and then they zoomed in on the picture of the Sasquatch's face, and then they had my picture superimposed. It's just kind of, that says the mystery's finally solved. I'm Sasquatch or something. Brian Denlinger Sasquatch. I thought that was funny, but there's actually a book that I have in my collection. It's called Weird New England, and they claimed it's a bunch of weird stories, news stories and folk tales and whatever else, collected from all over New England, and weird landmarks and tourist attractions and whatever else. And they actually had a story about a troop of Boy Scouts seeing a Bigfoot at Baxter State Park, Mount Katahdin, which is literally just right over that way, a little bit to the northwest of us. We're at the north entrance of Baxter State Park, the last town before you hit the north entrance. So there could be one in the area. Maybe it's me, I don't know. But I think that's going to be it for today. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to be doing the final seminar part, off-grid seminar number 14, the future of old paths living. I don't think off-grid is going far enough. And we're going to be talking about some ideas I have going forward, and then also how to start living off or going off-grid instantly, before you have land or before you're whatever. So that is going to be it. Thank you to everybody out there for watching, and it's been a lot of fun doing these videos so far. And if you could hit the like button, I would greatly appreciate that. Leave comments and things as well. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I have to say that because I'm realizing the importance of that. I have not been doing that very much, and so the channel's not really going anywhere. Of course, I have YouTube. They're my best friends. They like to promote my channel, of course. But yeah, we will see everybody tomorrow for the final part of the off-grid seminar. So stand strong, everybody out there. Read your Bible, King James Bible, pray like crazy, and we will see you tomorrow.